Bismillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Amma ba'd. قال سبحانه وتعالى في قرآنه المجيد وذلك بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا قولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما صدق الله العظيم وصدق رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. I hope I did that right. Alright, so this video here is titled Co-op Run, but really I want to jump into a little bit about working within your limits. Now, I always get this thing when I'm watching my videos back, whereby I see all the missed opportunities that I could have had. I say, oh man, there's a vault here, there's a dash there, there's a lazy here. Why didn't I go this way? Why didn't I do that? However, I always stop, and then I remember the state I was in when I was running, and I think, oh, so that's why I didn't do that. And sometimes it'll be a situation where I don't necessarily pick the best route, or I don't necessarily use the right movement. And I realized that even though it was the wrong movement, it kept me going. Was it right or wrong? The regulation of momentum says it was right. I might not have regulated the momentum perfectly, but it was the right movement. It kept me moving, it kept me running. I didn't break my ankles or anything stupid like that. So working within your limits is very important. And one of the easiest ways to test your limits and to find your limits, more importantly, is to actually do what I'm doing right now. And this is go on runs, do routes, mirror's edge style, you know? Mainly because it'll test your limits. It'll put you in situations that you don't normally find yourself when you're, lounging around at a spot, doing the same movement over and over again. And this is really important. Having that touch of realism to the way a person trains is incredibly important because it changes everything. A good example would be from this particular video, my limit is my co-op partner. Alright? So if I go faster than him, I lose him because he's my guide. I need to stay behind him because he's the one who knows where we're going. At this point, I have relinquished my right to choose where I want to go, and I've put it in his hands. Non-verbally so. And thusly, he presents a difficult challenge because I love going fast. I love doing things fast. I love shortcuts, and I love shortcuts that are shorter than cuts. I love shortcuts and shortcuts that cut shorter than short. You know what I mean? That's just how I am. And running behind a person who has a completely different mentality, a completely different plan, and a completely different objective is very difficult for a dresser. And that's why I did it. And that's why I advise as many dressers as possible, in fact all of y'all, to start doing it. Go out there, find a person who's jogging, and jog beside them. But the catch is, you gotta do your parkour. You gotta find those obstacles. You gotta find those opportunities to go faster. But then you still gotta stay with your partner. You see what I mean? So if you take a shortcut, you gotta remember the guy behind you is slower than you, or maybe he might be faster. Who knows? But what is important is that you set yourself a different limit. It's a different standard. And that is so difficult to do. Especially if you're trying to do it alone. When you have someone else, it's a little bit easier, but it's still difficult. And the difficulty comes from the physicality of it. In that when you appropriate your various training methodologies to make you faster and more efficient, you're likely to find trouble when people are slower and less efficient. And so you have to really think about what movements you use and how you use them. For example, if you notice during this run, I don't use dashes that much. And you'll see close to the end when I use a dash, and you'll see exactly what kind of effect it has on my abilities to move. But I don't use a lot of dashes, even if they are there. Mainly because I know what they'll do. They'll make me significantly faster. And they'll pose a problem to my partner here because he needs to stay in front of me. And I need to stay behind him. That's my psychology. You see what I mean? Because dashes are my go-to vault when I need to go super, super fast. With little effort. On another note, picking alternate routes is another good way of testing your abilities. Now, it's all fine and dandy when you're picking the fastest route every single time, or what you perceive to be the fastest route every single time. But part of the fun of doing a co-op run is that you get to go wherever you like. Except that you gotta stay with your buddy. Now, if your buddy's going a different way and you take a different route, you gotta find a way to mesh those routes together so you meet back in the middle. Kind of like back at the cathedral there. That's quite key. Because that changes how you train. It changes how you move at the time. It changes how much energy you put into what you do. Another important factor is, especially during this run, was that I didn't know how long I'd be running for. So even though I was incorporating a lot of my parkour movements and picking alternate routes, I still had to to control how much energy I was putting out because I didn't know where I was going. I mean, I know Manchester pretty well, but I didn't know where he was going. You see what I mean? I didn't know how far the run would go and where I'd have to say, okay, now I gotta jump ship. That's quite key. And by the car park here, you'll notice that I actually cut ahead of him. And this goes to show the power of parkour. That was a simple movement. It wasn't anything complicated. It wasn't a side flip to knee gainer. Oh, sorry. I'm getting sick. It wasn't a side flip to knee gainer or anything like that. It was just a simple, barely even a step vault. But the amount of speed it gave me was ridiculous. Putting into account the fact that I'd been running with this guy for quite a while, and I did a run before that. I might upload the footage. So I wasn't exactly in tip-top condition. Wasn't a tip-top tailor. But it gave me a lot of speed. The transition onto the bin too, that gave me even more speed. To the point where I didn't even know how far the guy was, and when I turn around, you'll notice he's quite a ways away. That didn't look like much, but that's very far. And so we get to the transitional point, where I get to dictate my own path, my own route. And you'll notice a significant difference in how I train. At this point, I am significantly fatigued. My hands are very, very cold, and breathing has become very difficult. I resort to my standard gait, my standard running pace, with my arms low by my side, leaning slightly forward in order to give myself that little bit of, in order to take away that bit of control. Those lazies there were super, super lazy, by the way, because I was plastered. But you'll find that eventually I run out of momentum. I run out of speed. Now, this is super, super important. Recovery time. It's easy when you're at a spot jumping up and down, and you get to sit down, and you get to get up, and you get to sit down, and you get to have a drink or whatever. But when you're on the run, you really got to think about how you're going to keep that momentum going. And this is why I always say, parkour can be anything. You can be walking, you can be running, you can be crawling. As long as you're keeping that momentum going, you're still doing parkour. And that's super, super important. Because I crawl down to walking pace. At this point, I'm trying to recover my breath. I'm trying to give myself motivation, because my mind is what's actually tired here, not my body. My partner's gone. And I've got no motivation except the bus that I'm going to go to. And I'm not exactly in a rush. But I still have to take a second, recuperate, let my body recover a little bit, and in the process, allow my mind to recover also. After about a minute, maybe less, I start to feel a little bit better. got a bit of speed in me. And that's really important. Keeping up the momentum even if you feel like you want to stop. Stabilizing yourself, stabilizing your breathing, stabilizing your thinking. Because if you keep thinking about how tiresome the run behind you was, you're never gonna think about how much more you have to go. You know? And it was a very, very pleasant surprise when I saw my buddy crossing the road up ahead. I was like, no way. And at this point, I guess something clicked. You know that moment when like your reserves kick in and your boosters start charging up and you're like maximum armor. Cloak engaged. You know, and when things start going crazy. And at this point I was in full efficiency mode. Bumped into a lady, unfortunately, but everything that I was thinking about at this point was efficiency. How do I get past him? And as you can see, it wasn't very difficult. The dash vaults start coming in. Oh, those damn dash vaults, man. I love the dash vault. I think it's a very beautiful movement and it's very versatile. I've sort of come up with 2 or 3 variations of the dash vault. You have the kind of standard legs forward. Then you have the sort of what would you call, like a staggered dash vault, where one hand touches first. And that dash vault just conquered everything at that point. Oh yeah, important part here. I could have gone up to the train station, but I thought, I'm going uphill. I have momentum. I want to go downhill, so I go up a little bit, and then I dismount down to give myself that little bit of extra boost. It doesn't look like it, but that little bit of downward momentum that it gave me really, really helped me keep the run going. Because at this point, I was burnt out all over again. But if you notice, in comparison to before, now I had two motivations. I just beat my buddy, and now I gotta beat the bus. Not that one. The one that's coming up. And this was incredibly, incredibly difficult. Because suddenly all of my parkour movements were useless. Because there were no obstacles. But I did have one thing under my belt, which is good running technique. And that is all that seals the deal. You can be the best tracer in the world, but if you have really bad running technique, you're not going to get anywhere. Trust me. You might be able to pull off the most prettiest, most beautiful side flips in the world, and you'll look all fancy in your big floppy pants, parachute pants, or whatever you call them. But if your running technique is down the drain, so are you. And I guess I'll conclude it there. It's been about 30 minutes or something like that. Enjoy yourselves out there. Stay safe. Keep it running. Keep it flowing. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. ولذلك فلنتبركر يا أيها المتبركر. I ain't never telling you what that means. Peace.